from Transload Marketing Solutions, which we offer marketing and digital marketing services, website services to specifically the transload industry. From what I know, I believe we are the only focused marketing company on the industry. And so I wanted to, I'm going to kind of echo actually some of similar messages to a few of the previous speakers to kind of walk through what our mindset is in approaching the entire industry. So I'm not going to necessarily talk about websites or marketing or social media or more about technology, a little bit about technology and disruption. I'm actually going to talk about the subject of digital. So what is digital? You know, I say I'm a digital specialist, and the basic meaning of the word digital is obviously just zeros and ones. That's the basic, when everything went digital computer-wise. But there's a lot of different growing definitions for what having a digital company means. And some people call digital, it's technology. Some say that it's marketing or advertising. You might have heard, I have a digital campaign happening for my company. Some refer to it as a way of engaging with customers or clients. Some talk about it as an entirely new way of doing business. But really what digital is it's re-examining the way that you're doing business and understanding where you can find new frontiers of value. So whenever we talk to any of our clients in the transload space, we're not talking about changing what has been successful. We're talking about augmenting your business and finding new avenues of providing new value for your company to create new revenue streams. And oftentimes we've found that most of the companies are a few generations old, and there's been a set way of doing business, which is fine, and it's been working for decades. But there's entirely new avenues of kind of untapped potential that we like to help individual companies discover. So digital shouldn't really be seen as a thing. It should be seen as a way of doing business, a new way of doing business in particular. So if we look at the past, a lot of the ways that clients were, new customers were gotten by individual companies was letter and mail, phone calls, and just good old-fashioned shaking hands and making relationships with other individuals. And if we come forward to the present, obviously the internet changed many, many things, where there's now email instead of snail mail, and there's new software solutions that have provided. Different businesses are in different levels of this. Some are more on the innovative side, where they're contacting individuals through newer sort of innovations of how you can actually acquire new customers. But really, the important thing to know and to be prepared for is if your company is not really positioned in a digital space or for the future, it should be. And the thing, like the previous speakers, both Roberts, they talked a little bit about disruption and oncoming disruption. And what exactly is that? The thing that got me interested in the transload industry about a year and a half ago is I started seeing, I pay close attention to where venture capital money is flowing with investors. And in the last 24 months, there's about $250 million actually that has flowed from VCs into a bunch of startup companies. Most of them were in the logistics space and in the broker space of individuals who are looking at finding inefficiencies in that space and capitalizing on it in order to disrupt, basically to take some of that business and to do it better, to do it cheaper. So I became keenly interested. I met Bill Elmore, who obviously is the president of TDANA, and I learned more about the industry as a whole because I like to follow these sort of patterns as they happen. So if you look at how fast, and that's one of the things that the previous speakers spoke about a few times, is how fast innovation can happen is often underestimated. If you look at the U.S. taxi industry in 2009 was worth $20 billion. That was this is an estimate of its annual revenue. 2009 is the year that Uber launched. A couple of years later, Lyft launched. In 7 years, it took 50% of the income of that industry away from taxis. That's very fast level of disruption that occurred. If you look at the hotel industry, Airbnb launched in 2008. The estimated revenue of that industry was $180 billion a year in just the U.S. specifically in 2008. And within 8 years, they took $15 billion in the U.S. away from those particular, that industry. When I say took it away, they took that part of the market share. And while that's not as much as a Uber or Lyft, it still is I'm sure you have seen in the news, it's definitely hitting the pocketbook of many different hotels that are out there. And there's various battles that are happening in relation to that. So this is exactly what I was saying, that following this money trail, there's around 13 startups. Some of them have raised 10 million, some have raised 20 million, and they're in varying phases. It's in its infancy, and it's an attempt to disrupt the area of logistics. Some individuals, in fact, the previous speaker from BNSF, I spoke to him, and they are well ahead of the curve, I think, in really positioning themselves well to be leaders in and to not be impacted by some of these innovative solutions that are being come up with. So here's an example of some of the companies that have been funded. I don't know if you've heard of any of these companies, but if not, it's worth checking out what they're offering and what they're saying they're offering. Vast majority of these are located in San Francisco in the Silicon Valley area. And then obviously we have these have been talked about as well with automation, self-driving cars. Tesla in September, they announced that in September they're going to be releasing their new Tesla Semi is what they're calling it. They actually showed like a teaser. I don't know if anyone's seen that. Has anyone seen that? The photo of that? Yeah? It's interesting. It's something that's worth following. So Uber and auto, that's been talked about as well, and that's an entirely other industry than logistics. That's automating these sort of systems. Amazon, the reason why I have them up here is because they have an entire development team in Minneapolis of over 100 developers who are actively working on some kind of a solution. They're very secretive about what they're doing on these kind of things that will be similar to these companies from the previous Convoy, where it's logistics-based. They're basically working to provide an app solution or some sort of technology solution. Again, it's not very clear what it is yet, to help disrupt somewhat of the logistics area. So when it comes to Transload, most are in a very strong position because Transloads are, in large majority, asset-based companies where you have the infrastructure. You have trucks or rail lines or many different physical assets where you're not going to be necessarily disrupted by that, but if you're not understanding what's happening with all of these oncoming changes and you're not capitalizing on them, then you could get lost to another person who is capitalizing on them. So it's worth really closely tracking this, and this is one of the things that we like to help provide to our clients, is an understanding of this ever-changing landscape, because it is changing every 12 months. It's different. It's now become a target of this disruption, which, similar to those examples I gave you in these other industries, I think a lot's going to change in the next 5 to 10 years in this space. So looking to the future, which is a huge thing that we like to do in the marketing space, we try to look what's going to be happening in your industry and with your company in 5 years, what's going to be happening in 10 years, 20. Many of like I gave the example that many are generational companies that have existed, and as that guard kind of changes to the younger generation, it's important to look at what that future holds, because the ways of doing business are going to change. Things are going to change, which kind of, I've watched most of the speakers, that message has actually been kind of talked about quite a bit today, which I think is good. This is an example of how assumed innovation, it's just a graphic example of how assumed innovation occurs, kind of just progressively over time. This is how most people think innovation occurs. This is not the case. For the most part, innovation is closer to this, where it's a geometric progression. There's change that's happening, and then it just ramps up very rapidly, and it's sort of like, you know how the speed of processors would double every 22 months, basically. That same sort of method of innovating is very much true across many different industries, and I think that we're going to see a very similar thing, like I said, over the next 5 to 10 years. So where am I going with all of this? Is your company positioned for a digital future? And that's something that each one of you has to look at. I'm sure that there are varying degrees of how well positioned you are for it versus some companies maybe not positioned at all. Some may not even have a website. Some may not even be thinking of this. If you aren't, you need to be. And that's really what we want to be providing to the transload industry, is solutions of how you can market your company in the oncoming digital age. These are examples of questions you should ask. Do you have a strong web presence? It used to be good enough to have a website 10 years ago. Now you need to have a good web presence. If you don't have a good web presence, I can tell you, because I do research on Google and how many searches there are on Google, there are companies, not necessarily consumers, but companies who are looking for transloads in certain areas of the country. If you're not ranking for those searches, someone else is getting that business. If your website doesn't sell your company well enough and present it well enough as being a reliable resource, there's a chance you may not get that business. So it's important to really be positioned well. It is your digital business card. It is your digital storefront that is how you communicate to a potential customer before you even know they're a potential customer. And so another thing I say is, are you taking advantage of new automations and innovations? So our clients that we work with, we like to advise them on potential opportunities that they're not seeing in the digital space that could produce more value for their company. There's normally like a set series of revenue streams that an individual or a company has become accustomed with. They're comfortable with those. They're doing okay on them. But they may not be seeing that there's parallel areas that they could add entirely new areas of revenue or value to their company. We like to help companies take a look at that and to capitalize on that. So to explain a little bit about what TMS is, we do video, meaning asset creation. We can come out with asset-based companies. It's great because you can do drone shots of beautiful facilities, warehouses, boats, trucks, trains. There's a lot of opportunity to sell how great your facility or your location looks like, which is a valuable way of, again, having your digital storefront look great. We design websites, we code websites, we provide consulting services in the digital space, and we also provide ongoing digital marketing services, which is how you make sure that when any individual is searching for you, for example, on Google or through another website, that they can find your company on the internet and you have a chance to actually acquire new customers through that method. We also provide digital security solutions if you, in some cases, have a more involved website to make sure that you're not, we obviously know the subject of digital security has been all over the press in the last year, and so that's an important thing to also consider in any company that has a web presence. And then again, digital automations. We have a tracking system that we developed as a company where we can help provide a clear idea of what your return on investment would be from your website. So it's not just you're putting money towards marketing and what's the return. You can actually see every phone call that comes in from your website, every email that comes in from your website, and you can tie it to actual revenue so that you can actually establish the value that we're providing, because obviously we're in this business to provide value to you. Here's an example of a website that we recently did. A key thing that I've seen on a lot of the transload, like I said, I got into the space about 1.5 years ago. I come from a background where I've worked with industries where they're much more digitally focused. And one thing I found is there's a lot of websites that aren't positioned to show up well on a mobile phone. The design could use help in order to make it more modernized, because it's like in the technology industry, it's constantly evolving. You want to stay abreast of and looking relevant and having a fresh look. And then again, we provide digital tracking service, similar to what Robert was just saying when he was up here before I was. It's incredible how much information you can learn from a person who's surfing the web. If an individual hits your website, you'd be surprised how much information you can establish as a business to then be able to reconnect with that individual and to sort of bring them in as a customer. That's also value that we provide. This is an example of our digital tracking system that we have, where you can see and follow the actual leads and quotable leads that are generated for your company off of searches. I realize I might be, probably, it's not lost on me that 99% of you probably do not get much business from the internet. That's not lost on me. My whole point is, You should be, because there's traffic there, and you can get business from that if you're actually trying to capitalize on it. So for this convention, we are specifically offering a digital analysis service. Normally, we're offering it at a discounted rate just for the convention, where what we'll do is we will go through what your digital presence is. We will go through your website. We will look at how well your website most likely converts. We will go through where you rank in relation to your different geographic locations for searches, and many other points. And we'll provide you with a comprehensive strategy that's a digital strategy you can execute on your own, no strings attached from us, or if you want to engage us to help provide that implementation for you, of course, we would be happy to. But we're interested in trying to help as many of you as we can. I'm interested in providing this marketing analysis and digital analysis for each of your companies. So we have a booth right outside that we would like to speak to you after this or whenever you guys have a moment and see if we can actually get you signed up to do this analysis for you. I think we can provide very interesting information to each of your companies, and I think it's worth the opportunity to see what kind of value we can help provide you by looking at this new frontier. Thank you.